Hi guys, I'm so glad you're here. So before we dive into today's challenge, I'd like to just talk to you about some beliefs and myths that people have around taking insurance in private practice. So the first myth is that I need to be on every available insurance panel to have a successful, profitable practice. Believe it or not, this is actually not true. In fact, I encourage people to do a lot of research before they decide on the insurance panels they're going to participate with. I recommend figuring out who the top 3 highest payers are in your state or your area before you decide to credential with anyone. Second myth, private pay is better than an insurance-based private practice. So for some people, this may be true. If you're in an area where you're highly specialized and many people need your services, they will be willing to pay private pay rates. However, if you're anything like my area, it's pretty oversaturated and most therapists do take insurance in my area. So to compete, I chose to have an insurance-based private practice and now a telehealth private practice. And I have a steady stream of referrals coming in from the insurance companies. Another thing to think about with private pay versus insurance practices is what happens if a recession hits. So people are going to need to use their insurance. They're not going to have cash readily available. The next myth, number 3, is a lot of people think that they must get credentialed with the insurance companies to still take and participate with insurances. So actually, this is not true. You can be an out-of-network insurance provider and still get access to insurance-based clients that way. You can still help them file claims and get reimbursed if they have out-of-network benefits. So this is a good option for people who don't want to credential with the insurance companies, but still want to help their clients who want to use their insurance for therapy. Myth number 4. Taking insurance is super complicated. I'll never be able to figure it out, and I just won't be able to do it. So it is true that there's a learning curve with getting the system set up, and there's some education that needs to happen before you can have a successful insurance-based private practice. But once you get those systems into place, it's literally as easy as clicking a button to file the insurance claims. I do it every day. It's super simple. So those are just a few of the myths in private practice that I wanted to clear up and just get out of the way. Are there any other myths that you've heard of? If so, drop them in the comments below so we can talk about them in our discussion time. So now I want to tell you a little story. I want to tell you about a clinician named Rebecca. Rebecca's a fellow colleague of mine, and she actually purchased my insurance billing course for private practice. Rebecca's in her 60s. She's been working for a government agency for the last 30 years. She's completely overwhelmed, underpaid, totally stressed, and she never thought she'd be successful in taking insurance in her own private practice. Well, I'm happy to say 6 months after taking my course, she is now running her own almost full telehealth private practice, insurance-based practice from home. And she just turned in her 30-day notice to the agency. So I'm like beyond excited to see how much less stress she's going to feel in about 2 months. Like I cannot wait to hear. She has all of her systems in place. She has a pretty thorough understanding of how to bill the insurances too. She's credentialed. She's good to go. So to tell you a little bit about me, I was in private practice all by myself for the last 10 years. I was in a brick and mortar office. I had billers doing all of my insurance billing. And then over the years, I noticed a lot of discrepancies with my clients were telling me their copays were this much versus what the billers were telling me their copays were, and the deductible information was different than what the clients were telling me. So it was super confusing. The billers, you know, they really didn't like give me passwords to things. I didn't have access to the insurance panels. It's a big long story, but finally I asked the billers for a back balance report of all the outstanding balances owed to me by my clients because I was just getting fed up with all these discrepancies. And when I got the report, I was looking at a $12,000 back balance report that I had not been paying attention to for about 10 years. So long story short, I decided to start doing my own billing to see if it was something I could handle, because I was worried that, I could no longer trust them to give me the right information. In fact, I didn't want to trust anyone to do my billing from that point on. So I decided to bill the next first client that came through, and the billers found out and they actually fired me. So I had about 1 month to start to figure out insurance billing for over 100 active clients. Needless to say, I was like a total nervous wreck. I was totally overwhelmed. And right about that same time, I had been researching becoming an online therapist through Amber Lida's online therapy group. You guys probably know about that group. I had just decided to sign up for her course when all of this happened. So I needed to learn how to make a telehealth practice and an insurance-based online practice work. So because of all that, I've spent a ton of time researching how to bill insurances in my private practice and now my telehealth practice. So I taught myself and I created systems that work for me. They work pretty well, just the click of a button. And because of all this, I realized that there was a huge need for a course to walk other clinicians through insurance billing in their private practice, whether it be telehealth or brick and mortar, whichever one you'd like. So the creation of the course is a whole nother story, but needless to say, I'm now running a full-time, insurance-based, telehealth, private practice, and I'm traveling the world as a digital nomad. Currently, I'm living in Miami. I don't know where I'll go next. So over the last few years, my dreams really have come true, and I hope your dreams will come true as well, whatever they are. I hope this process is going to help you really define those and help you decide what to do next. So enough about me. Today, I want to focus on teaching you a very important step in this whole process. I want to help you decide if you should have a brick and mortar practice, a telehealth practice, or a hybrid practice. So this is actually a very important decision if you are going to take insurance. Different insurances cover different types of scenarios and different practice situations, so you need to be aware of that. I'd like you to take a moment and think about what are the things that feel positive for you for each of these categories. For brick and mortar offices, I hear people talk about liking to be in the office with other therapists, to have someone to bounce ideas off of and just be around other people. Also, therapists tell me they like to be in the same room with their clients. Some therapists feel like they can feel the energy with the person being in the same room, and they really like that. Do either of those reasons resonate with you? I'd just like you to think about that for a minute and see if you were like, oh yeah, that's really important to me. So I hope you're following along with your workbook that I gave you, and be sure to fill in your answers so you can get a clear picture of what's really important to you and what's not important to you as far as your practice goes. Now, for a complete telehealth practice, people tell me they love the freedom of being able to be at home when they're not working. Personally, this is a big one for me. I actually sold everything a year ago, and I've been traveling and working. Traveling truly is my passion, so this is perfect for me. Another pro of having an all telehealth practice is you get to save on rent, you get to save on commute times, and not having to deal with potential like inter-office politics and that sort of thing. And lastly, some people want to opt for a hybrid practice. This really is the best of both worlds for most people, or some people. You get to make your own schedule and have some days at home and some in the office. And you get to see some clients in the office that would prefer brick and mortar, and then the clients that also would like telehealth. So you still get the social contact with other clinicians, but can have some of the downtime and more time around the house to get things done if that appeals to you as well. So, do one of these three options really resonate with you as I'm going through these? If so, I'd love to hear your answer below in the comments and why it makes sense for you. So next, I want to talk about the negatives or the cons of each of these types of practices. As I mentioned before, a brick and mortar practice does involve paying rent. Oftentimes, you'll need to sign a long-term lease for a brick and mortar office. This can be a scary experience for people that are just starting out in their own private practice. Rent is a huge commitment without having your practice already built. That can be pretty scary, not knowing like how much income you're going to have coming in. And then signing a lease and not knowing how your office mates are going to be, or if you'll even like being in a brick and mortar office, can be a scary option for people just starting out. Are there any cons you see to having a brick and mortar practice? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know. Anything I missed? And as for a telehealth practice, there are cons for that situation as well. So being a telehealth therapist can be isolating. It could be lonely at times. Some clinicians report the loss of connection with their clients while doing telehealth sessions. Personally, I don't feel that, but some clinicians do. And lastly, some clinicians report problems with eye fatigue from having too many face-to-face sessions in one day over the computer. So these are all things to consider in your practice. Do any of these resonate with you? Let me know in the comments if you're like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. Lastly, a hybrid practice can be the best of both worlds again for a clinician if you're trying to find a balance. There's a few drawbacks. It can be difficult at times to have telehealth days versus in-office days. A lot of times clients need more flexibility with their schedules, and if you're offering both, it can get a little complicated to manage. I had that problem in the beginning when I tried to do both. It was hard to say, well, that's my telehealth day and that's my office day. I did learn in my telehealth training with Amber Lyda, if you offer a client like the office over telehealth, they're probably more likely to say, I'll just meet you in the office. Things are a little different. Telehealth's becoming more popular, but you know, a lot of clients still would choose brick and mortar over telehealth. So these are all cons to think about in the different type of practices that you're looking at. Do any of these stand out for you? Any of these options sound much better than the other? I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know if one of them stands out over the others. So those are the pros and cons of each type of practice that you can have. As I said earlier, it's very important to figure out which type you'd like to have before you get credentialed with the insurance companies. Some insurances don't cover telehealth. Some insurances require third-party platforms if you're going to do telehealth with your clients. Some insurances are great for brick and mortar practices, but are not so great for hybrid practices. So you need to know all this before you decide who to credential with. We will deep dive into that in the next lesson. But for today, I challenge you to download that workbook that I emailed you before the challenge began. And I'd like you to complete day one's exercises. I've included a decision tree to help walk you through which type of practice is right for you. I'd love for you to share your completed workbook with me. You can drop it in the Facebook group, or you could take a picture and email it to me. Take a picture, share it in the group, however you'd like to, and just let us know what you're thinking. And if you're stuck or you can't decide, feel free to reach out to me and I will help walk you through the process. Okay, so I hope this day one lesson has helped. And tomorrow we're going to dive into some other issues. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.